This is the Ancient and Medieval History Lecture for Friday, the 8th of April, 2022. And we have just completed 2 1/3 days of review through video on Justinian and Theodora. We learned about. I just did this, and then I realized I didn't have the camera on, so I forced students who are here having to listen to this again. Ha! John the Cappadocian, who did taxes, Tribonium, who did the law. We learned about the Deems, the Blues and the Greens, the Nika Revolt. We learned how the former prostitute/actress, come Empress Theodora, saves Justinian from his own fear during the Nika Revolt. How Belisarius is able to check the Persians. Justinian is able to make peace with King Cherestes of Persia. And then how Belisarius is sent westward to conquer Vandalic Africa and to try to conquer Rome and Ostrogothic Italy. How he almost does this, but again and again and again, politics intervenes, including the sending of Narses, the eunuch, who tries to divide command, making everything worse. We learned how Justinian finally gets Rome and finally seems to win, but then things begin to fall apart. The Ostrogothic peace is undermined by Belisarius having to be clever and not honorable, which undermines the Ostrogothic faith in Roman justice. We learned about how the plague ravages Constantinople. And while the earlier plagues that hit Rome were plagues, this seems to be the first indication of bubonic plague, the specific plague that is going to cause the Black Death in the Middle Ages. We learn about how the Persian great king advances and even bathes personally in the Mediterranean Sea. How the enemies of the Byzantines seem to coordinate with one another. But how in the end Justinian is able to push the Persians back and take parts of Italy and even Spain before he finally passes. But these Justinian adventures, which include the building of the Haggia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom in Constantinople, which include the use of mosaics in art. Now, a mosaic, and I hope you experienced making them in art class when you were a kid, is you take little colored tiles and you glue them to a surface. And if you are careful, you can make the little colored tiles tell stories and have pictures. They look really neat from... Don't look at me like that. You never did mosaics?
No.
Oh, you poor deprived fellow.
So.
No. From a distance, they look really vibrant and not quite real, but almost. But up close, it's just a bunch of different colored tiles in these weird patterns. But that is the special type of art of the Byzantines. They are really good at mosaics. And the portraits that we have of Justinian and Theodora are from mosaics that they set up in Italy, in the areas that they conquered. Now, the Hagia Sophia is built on the principle that an arch is more impressive than a post and lintel door. That is a post and lintel door. It's got 2 posts and it's got a strut across it. That's the lintel. But an arch is different. An arch requires a series of pie-shaped pieces of stone that all fit together perfectly, so they fall together simultaneously, creating a very strong arc-type support. Stronger, actually, than a post and lintel, if built properly. Now, a post and lintel can do the job, but an architect who knows what he's doing and a stonemason who knows the kind of stone he wants to get can really make beauty with arches. So arches are considered by the ancient world to be a sign of grandeur. Now, an arch is a 2-dimensional structure. What if you can make an arch in 3 dimensions? Arch, 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 arch. That's a dome. A dome is even more august and impressive than an arch. So, Church of Holy Wisdom, at its base, has a series of arched colonnades which support a lot of the weight. Okay, what these are lines of columns And atop the columns are arches. So it looks, really open and really beautiful, and they tend to support the outer weight of the walls, series of them. So it sort of looks like you're looking into infinity. But then, above the walls supported by the arched colonnades, are a series of arches on the wall that make a basis for half-barrel vaults, which are along the walls half domes. Half domes. So you got a half dome, half dome, half dome, and half dome that support a central square that's even higher than the half domes. And that becomes a series of arches that form the central dome. And there are windows around the base of the dome because there are arched column supports high up. So you're an ancient person and you walk into this massive interior space and you've got this obviously incredible weight of stone directly above your head. But because of the way the human eye tracks light and shadow, because there are all these windows around the outer edge of the base of the dome, it looks like you've got this giant mass of stone floating on light, floating on air. And even that is supported by a series of half-dome barrel vaults, and that is supported by a bunch of arched colonnades. This is impressive, okay, especially at a time when outside of Byzantium and the Arab world, most people can't make a three-story building work. So, wow. And for 1,000 years, it's the biggest dome in the world, and it's a church that's so impressive that around the year 1000, when the Russians are shopping around for a brand of Christianity to buy, they go to Rome, they meet the Pope, they're not impressed. They go to Byzantium, they see the Church of Holy Wisdom, the Haggia Sophia. Sophia, again, means wisdom, remember, Philosophia. And they're like, yeah, we want to be part of this. And to this day, the Russian Orthodox Church says the first Rome was where St. Peter went and died, and it was the first capital of Christianity. Then the second Rome became the capital of Orthodox Christianity. But when Constantinople falls in 1453, the third Rome is Moscow. Moscow, the heart of the Russian Orthodox Church, considers itself to be the lineal descendant of St. Peter, the third Rome. Obviously, Roman Catholics dispute this, but Russian Orthodox believe this. And this church is a huge part of making that happen. This church, and its impressive architecture, is so impressive that it basically convinces the Russians to become Eastern Orthodox Christians. That's the power of architecture. And the Justinian's code is still a basis of civil law. But not just that. Most of the free world, I just closed it. It's going to be warmer now. It looks so cold. It's cold. You look at the heat. It should be 68. Is it? See? It's 68. Okay. It's not warm enough that I'm not warm enough even for the outline. Oh. Sorry, you're crisp. There we go. By the way, she didn't ask for a bit of help. It's entirely me being intrusive. Made that whole conversation happen. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Somebody has manners. Most of the free world uses the Napoleonic Code as its basis for law. We don't. We use English common law. But Germany, France, most of the former European colonies that haven't gone over to savagery or communism use the Napoleonic Code. The Napoleonic Code is directly based on Justinian's Code. It is a central imperial law code, whereas our law code, English common law, is based on trial decisions and precedents. Our system of law is much more organic and evolving than a system of law that has a strict code. But you've got Hammurabi's code, you've got the the 10 Commandments, you've got the 12 tables, you've got Justinian's code, you've got Napoleonic code, law, all of which come from the same basic source. The ruler decides this is the law, these are the standards of evidence, These are the punishments available. Judges can work within very strict limits. So Justinian and Theodora, super important. But, as was said in the last bit of the last video, what they tried was expensive. And what they tried didn't fully succeed. You know how you make an effort in life, and it's really, really hard, and it takes all of your attention and most of your energy, and then you achieve something, and it's success, and it like clicks into place, and you can relax for a little while? That never happens with Byzantium. Because the Ostrogoths are never properly pacified in Italy, and in general, it's just constant pushing against Persia and against domestic forces. Justinian does amazing stuff, but he doesn't ever get enough success to lock that success into place. And as a result, the system is constantly stressed. Now, the Byzantines inherit that sloth-like, sluggish Roman energy. The population is relatively stagnant. There's not much new money coming in. And so after Justinian and Theodora, the empire stagnates. Until about 70, 80 years later, when the emperor Heraclius comes along. That's Heraclius. Heraclius is fighting a dynamic Persian great king. Romans have emperors, Persians have great kings. And so, Heraclius, early in his reign, loses Syria. He loses Armenia. He loses Judea. He loses a bunch of areas in the east. And the Persians are even threatening Anatolia and Constantinople. So the beginning of Heraclius' reign is awful from a Byzantine point of view. But then Heraclius organizes the strength that remains to him. And he does a great job at deploying that strength and pushing the Persians slowly back and then quickly back into Persia. And then Heraclius invades Persia and he dominates them. And while he doesn't take the Persian Empire, he goes farther east than most emperors since Trajan. Remember, conquered Mesopotamia. So Heraclius' early reign is massive defeat to massive victory. And had he died at that point, he would have been very happy. But he lived to see the disciples of Mohammed surge out of Arabia, conquer the Persian Empire, and then conquer everything he just reclaimed. The Arabs conquer Syria, Judea, Sinai, Egypt, Cyrenaica, and they're going westward, and they threaten Anatolia and Constantinople. So Heraclius has the very dramatic life of massive defeat from Persia, massive victory against Persia, massive defeat from the Arabs. He dies. Just think about how a future historian might describe your entire life in one obnoxious, sarcastic little sentence like that. Okay. For the next 500 years or so, the Byzantine Empire is holding out in Anatolia and in the Balkans and in the islands of the Mediterranean, but they have learned to kiss basically Syria and the rest of the Middle East bye-bye. That's long gone. It's Arab now. It's Muslim now, not Christian. But the Arabs around the year 1000 are replaced along Byzantium's borders by a new threat, the Turks. Now, the Turks are a Central Asian people that culturally have more in common with the Huns than they do anyone else. But they're converted to Islam in their march into the Middle East. The Turks threaten Persia, they take over Mesopotamia, and they take over basically the center of the Middle East, and they're gonna expand further. Now, these are a group of Turks called the Seljuk Turks. Seljuk. And in 1071, which is the last thing I'm going to teach you about Byzantine history before the quiz today, the Seljuk Turks, at a place called Manzikert, fight against the Byzantine armies. at the Kilikien gates. And they smash the Byzantines, they destroy their army, and they are through the Kilikien gates once and for all. From 1071, the Byzantines no longer have the Anatolian Peninsula, or plateau. They no longer have the protection of the Taurus Mountains and the Kilikien gates. They hold a remnant rim of territories around the outer edge of Anatolia. They don't ever get the center back. And whenever the Turks want to, they threaten Constantinople from the Asian shore directly. Sometimes they send fleets up. From that point, the Byzantines no longer really have anything but the outer rim of Anatolia and the Balkans, and soon the Turks are even going to cross and invade the Balkans. The Battle of Manzikert is a turning point battle in human history, because before that point, Byzantium was strong enough to hold its own. Not since Justinian had it tried to conquer, but it was able to hold out. It was able to provide a good shield against the Islamic threat to Christian Europe. But after 1071, the Byzantine Empire is dying. It's a testament to their strength that they hold out from 1071, when the Battle of Manzikert happens, until 1453, when the Turks finally break into Constantinople with cannon. That's still several hundred years of just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and losing. But they still held out until 1453. So, there's the story of the first light of civilization in the Dark Ages of Western Europe, the Byzantine Empire. Any questions before we go into the quiz? Yeah.
John the Cappadocian, right? And then that's a different John than John that was.
That was the general later, yeah. Different guy. Yeah. And for what it's worth, I'm not going to ask you about John, the other general guy, because I thought it would be too confusing. Okay, please clear your desks off and get ready for the quiz. Bye-bye. Oh, remember, on Monday you have Chapter Survey 10 due, and you're going to have a Baker quiz on that. So, bon chance.